The Morning Majlis, talking the stories that are shaping headlines. This is Pulse 95.
Yes, this is Pulse 95. Welcome back onto the Morning Majlis. So for the first time, public and private sector employees headed to work on a Friday this past weekend. This was crazy. We want to know your insights about this and your feedback about this. Text us at 4215 if you are one of those people who actually went to work on Friday. Thankfully for us here on the Morning Majlis, or from the Sharjah Broadcasting Authority, because we are part of the Sharjah government, we did not have to work on Friday, but I'm sure the rest of the private sector across the country had to. Most of them did, especially with the half day. So we want to know your insights. If you worked, how was that? Did it feel weird for you? Text us 4215. So yeah, many residents experienced their first Monday blues on January 3rd as well, when the country officially began the new work week. So it's brand new for us, brand new feeling for us. We're still trying to suck it in. Employees, they have lauded though the shorter work week, which they say will increase productivity and improve mental health. And that's what has been proven in other countries that experience that as well. So what do we think about this, guys?
Well, the thing about it is, and from conversations I've had with people I know, is not everyone is exactly on the same page, especially when it
They're
comes...
still trying.
Exactly.
To kind of coordinate.
In many different ways,
Yeah.
indeed, exactly.
Yeah.
Especially with the private companies, because many of those are still sticking to Fridays and Saturdays as weekends, as days off. So they're still sort of lagging behind in the transition, but it's looking like eventually it's going to be, they're going to be lining up with the banks and government institutions as well. For us here in Sharjah, we've had Fridays off. It's a 4-day work week as well for the government employees as well. And for that, news has been very much welcome. There is definitely a strangeness to it, as you had described, AK, just something about waking up on a Sunday and having that be off as well. It's just a very, very strange times.
It is.
Definitely, I think it just feels, it felt really strange in a way that you don't know how to react. For me personally, half of my household was still working, so I was the only one who was technically off, being a government employee of the Emirate of Sharjah. But then, despite all of that, I got a lot of envious looks and messages as well, saying, "Oh man, you're so lucky." But despite having those 3 days off, I still woke up with one feeling, and it was, it's just not enough. I need one more day off, maybe more day off.
You're getting greedy.
So it's getting greedy at the moment, for sure.
Don't be that greedy.
No,
That's
just
perfect.
is.
3-day weekend is just perfect.
I think any weekend will always be short. Even if you take a big holiday, is going to be short. But it's good to see on the roads, because a lot of people, when they realise that this week is going to be slightly shorter because of the Sunday being off, and a lot of people said let's extend our annual leave into the first week of January itself. Today, driving into work, I witnessed a lot of people who love coasting and relaxing on the lanes, but back on the roads. I saw traffic back on the roads. It looks like it's back to business now. This is going to be the first proper Monday blue for a large majority of you. So shout out to those who are coming back and also going to school at the moment, or even doing school from home. I spoke to some Sharjah school students within my own family, and they were just ecstatic. They're like, well, this is the best thing ever. We're so happy.
It does strengthen family ties, don't forget that. So that's a big plus. And that's one of the reasons why His Highness Sheikh Dr. Sultan bin Mohammed Al Qasimi, the Supreme Council member and ruler of Sharjah, decided to give us that 3-day weekend.
It does. I mean, that's the most important thing. I think with the whole idea is that you get to spend more time at home, more time with your families and loved ones, and have a better work-life balance. And that's pretty amazing. Let us know on the text lines.
And for you, thankfully, cutting costs.
Cutting costs.
Yeah,
it
petrol.
Is. Petrol. The early morning commute, the drives.
Happier employee.
Happier employee indeed.
But I'd love to find out how everyone's experience was. If you had to work the Friday, what was that like? text us at 4215. I know for a lot of people, their bodies, their minds, they're very much acclimated to Friday being a day off. So just having to get up for work for that must have been an entirely surreal experience. So we'd love to hear from you on the text lines.
Yeah, and even in Dubai in particular, I noticed that there was a lot more people that went off to the Friday prayers because the mosques would be full well before 1 p.m. and you could see that a lot of people were making the good use of the break that they got and they get for on a Friday, and it was a nice refreshing change as well. So that's what's been happening. But let us know on the text lines 4215. Up next, we're talking about something that sounds a little bit like Transformers. It is Deltacron, apparently. It's a new variant out of
Here we go again.
Cyprus. Well, stay with us here on the Morning Majlis.
Pulse 95.
The Morning Majlis, talking the stories that are shaping headlines. This is Pulse 95.
Well, we are paying tribute to Bob Saget, sadly, the U.S. comedian who delighted millions of people as the star of television's Full House in the 1980s and 1990s. We all grew up watching that. Most of us have, really. Mm-hmm. He was found dead in a Florida hotel room, according to local sheriff on Sunday. Now, the Orange County Sheriff's Office, they tweeted from their verified account, saying that earlier today, this was yesterday, deputies were called to the Ritz-Carlton Orlando Grande Lakes for a call about an unresponsive man in a hotel room. The man was identified as Robert Saget, or Bob Saget, and pronounced deceased on scene. Detectives found no signs of foul play or drug use in this case. Now, looking back at Bob Saget, who was 65, starred as Danny Tanner, the widowed father of 3 girls, in his efforts to raise them, assisted by his brother-in-law Jesse and friend Joey, formed the heart of the popular show Full House. It was the sitcom that we grew up watching, and it really does, influence us really till this day, and we still remember it as if it was yesterday. It ran for 8 seasons from 1987 until 1995 on ABC. Netflix aired a sequel focusing on one of Danny's daughters, DJ Tanner, which ran from 2016 until 2020. Not only that, he was also the popular host of America's Funniest Home Videos.
Definitely, and he also was the narrator on the show How I Met Your Mother from 2005 to 2014. And there was a Netflix reboot of Full House called Fuller House, where he reprised his role as Danny Tanner as well, and often played himself or parodied himself in one-time or recurring roles in TV shows and movies. So he's a face that a lot of people are familiar with. I'm looking at some of the comments online, and people who had gone to his live shows, they all have very long Bob Saget stories. They all describe him as extremely nice, down to earth, and personable, and everybody looks very, very fondly on their interactions with him. He was quite open and accessible to his fans throughout those stand-up comedy shows. And speaking of his stand-up comedy, it was the exact opposite of what he depicted on the screen in Full House and those shows, where he was this sort of clean-cut, wholesome persona. His stand-up act was quite vulgar and raunchy, in fact, and something that a lot of people also look fondly on, described as a comedian's comedian for the way he portrayed himself on the stage.
Yeah, and he was quite active on the theatre front as well. Apart from his stand-up comedy work, he's also been on the Broadway, quite active on that scene at the moment. But it's one thing that I'm really concerned about as well is obviously the investigations are going to look at a lot of angles, especially when it comes to an individual, 65 years of age, also, and just found unresponsive in a hotel just right after his very successful opening night, or one of the opening nights of his live performances. And he said that I had no idea. I did a 2-hour set tonight. I am happily addicted again to this stuff. Check out bobsaget.com for my dates dates in 2022. He's actually released those dates, and it's all up on his website, and even on his Twitter feed as well. He's been quite active and posting about what he's going to be getting up to. It's just a shocking development, really, and just goes to show how unpredictable life is. And if him just posting a big selfie on his Twitter feed, and just 24 hours later he's no more. And I think a lot of you would remember the America's Funniest Videos as well, that program that he hosted for a number of years. And I literally was a big fan of Bob Saget's work when I was growing up and watching him, and it just envisioned what a normal, ideal dad would be like. Very calm, controlling as well. Has things under his control, and is very quick to think on his feet when there's a little bit of a crisis at home.
Definitely.
Yeah, and tributes they have been pouring in for sure for him, and especially Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen. They might be known for being ultra private nowadays, but the death of their TV dad caused them to speak out publicly in his honor yesterday. So following his death, the Olsen twins, who happen to be now 35, they paid tribute to their late Full House co-star in a statement obtained by People magazine. They said that Bob was the most loving, compassionate, and generous man. We are deeply saddened that he is no longer with us, but know that he will continue to be by our side to guide us as gracefully as he has always been. Now, we are thinking of his daughters and wife, family, and we are sending our condolences. Those are the words of Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen, who played one. I believe it's Michelle.
Yes.
Yes. They played one daughter, but they were swapping.
It's
because they're twins.
It's a very, very sad story indeed, and certainly a big loss for comedy, especially because Norm Macdonald died 4 months ago, and him and Bob Saget worked a lot together. They, in fact, came up with the film Dirty Work, one of the cult comedy movies as well, and definitely someone who's everyone is just familiar with as a face on American television and a big part of pop culture as well. And I recommend you watch his Comedy Central roast as well, just to get an idea of how funny he was outside of those television shows and in more of a raunchy comedy setting as well. So we'll pay tributes to Bob Saget, and if you have any fond recollections of watching his work on television growing up, watching Full House, then do text us at 4215. Up next, we'll talk all about Oman looking more like Switzerland right here on the Morning Majlis.
Pulse 95.
The Morning Majlis, talking the stories that are shaping headlines. This is Pulse 95.
Welcome back on to the Morning Majlis, and we're going to update you on what's happening with world number one, Novak Djokovic. Now, the 40-year-old arrived in Melbourne last week ahead of the Australian Open, hoping to win a record-breaking 21st Grand Slam title. But guards on Melbourne's airport, they decided the unvaccinated star had failed to present a solid medical reason for not being jabbed. So his visa was revoked and he was moved to an immigration detention facility pending deportation. So in an emergency online court hearing today, federal judge listened to extended legal wrangling about the process before jumping to his defense, the 34-year-old's defense. So basically, an Australian judge demanded Monday, today, to know what more Novak Djokovic could have done to meet the country's strict pandemic entry requirements, offering a glimmer of hope to the detained tennis superstar as he fights deportation.
Right, Rania, and what they're trying to figure out right now is whether or not Novak Djokovic can stay in Australia to compete in the Australian Open, for which he had received an exemption from getting vaccinated. And so far, this isn't just about a denial of entry, about a rejected visa. It comes at a time where in Australia there's been a steep rise in COVID-19 cases. Case numbers for the entire pandemic in the country have been approaching 1 million. And while on the surface it may seem like Djokovic is not much of a health risk to the Australian public, for many Australians, they have memories of painful border closures and other pandemic restrictions. They're still reeling from that emotionally because for 2 years, tens of thousands of Australians were unable to return home. Airlines cut flight numbers to comply with government limits on the number of returning citizens. All the while, celebrities were allowed to enter the country to do all sorts of work and be in movies and such. So there's that sense of bitterness among the public about people of a certain status getting that special treatment. And the Novak Djokovic tends to trigger that sentiment as well.
Yeah, I think at the moment the big question is, to what extent is the Australian government going to fight on, and to what extent is he going to continue be in the detention hotel, let's say, and fight his case, because he has declared that he had a medical contraindication that exempted him from requirement to be double vaccinated, and even though he was not required to, had provided evidence to support that claim before boarding his flight to Australia and on arrival. Technical issues that delayed the start of the virtual hearing in the Federal Circuit and Family Court also intermittently affected a planned live stream of the session for the public. But at the moment, instead of training for the Australian Open, Djokovic remains in a hotel used for asylum seekers since Thursday. And there's a number of demonstrators and supporters who are out there voicing their support for Novak. But across the world, there's a huge sentiment of people saying that if Novak is a public figure, and in Serbia the vaccination rates are below or just touching above 50%, and if he's a known figure, and if this is the way he's acting, he's influencing others to not take the vaccine. So he should be made an example of and treated the way he's made responsible and made an example of the way he's being treated in Australia. But then again, there's the other side that says, if we don't have Djokovic in the Australian Open, it affects the Australian Open. He's a man who's so high up in his trophy ladder that he's going to become the greatest. He still is regarded as the greatest of all-time players. But then if he bags another title, another Grand Slam, he's going to be in the top of the table, and this episode is deterring him from climbing that ladder. Yeah,
and there's no denying the importance of this tournament to Djokovic for his career. The Serbian government has also rallied behind him, saying he's been treated and singled out unfairly. Now, the argument for Djokovic's defense is that he was under the impression he could enter the country because he had received that medical exemption, which was granted on the grounds that he had a natural immunity from being infected with COVID-19. They were under the impression that the Department of Home Affairs indicated in an email that he met those requirements and he was approved to enter the country. However, the government said Djokovic was mistaken to think he was guaranteed entry, and that a previous COVID infection is not a valid medical reason as to why he could not be vaccinated. What's interesting is that the judge in the case is leaning towards Djokovic in many of his statements. So the judge said that Djokovic may have felt intimidation or pressure during his conversations with authorities, even if that was not the intention as well. So it's going to be interesting to see if the judge in fact rules in Djokovic's side at the end of this.
I think that might be the case. I think it looks like it. I think we might see Novak Djokovic play in this tournament, and to what extent are people going to boycott the tournament because of this is just going to be worth seeing. But so far it stands, and we'll definitely keep a close eye on the developments, and I'm sure we'll hear some massive developments over the next few hours as the court does make its decision. Well, for now, we have a decision that Morning Majlis is going to be heading off, letting you enjoy some musical entertainment on air, and we shall be back again tomorrow morning bright and early.
We certainly will, so catch us tomorrow on the Morning Majlis at 7 a.m. Until then, you could check out our conversations from the program. Just head over to our YouTube channel at Pulse 95 Radio. Make sure you subscribe. Stay tuned to Pulse 95 for more programming and entertainment. Until next time, this is the Morning Majlis.
If you liked this episode of the Morning Majlis, drop a like and subscribe.
95.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram for all our daily updates and top stories.
Pulse.